My name is Chloe, and I still remember the exact moment everything broke. It wasn't quiet or slow, it was loud, sharp, and final. My mom's voice cut through the house like a blade as she yelled, "Leave my house!" The words didn't just echo in the hallway, they settled deep inside me. We lived in a modest but well-kept house on the edge of a small city in Europe, a place filled with years of memories that suddenly felt foreign to me. The living room smelled faintly of old wood and strong coffee, and yet, in that moment, it felt cold and unfamiliar. I stood near the doorway, my hands still at my sides, not shaking, not clenched, just still. Across from me, my mom stood firm, her face hard with anger. Behind her were the others. My uncle Daniel with his crossed arms, my cousin Elena watching silently, and my younger brother Leo, who couldn't even meet my eyes. It hurt more than I expected, seeing them all lined up like that, as if I had already been judged without a chance to speak. It wasn't just her voice telling me to leave, it was all of them, silently agreeing. But I didn't argue. I didn't ask why. And I didn't cry. Something inside me had already made its decision long before that moment. Maybe it had been building for years, through quiet disappointments and words left unsaid. Maybe I had always known this day would come. I simply nodded once, turned around, and walked up the narrow staircase to my room. My room was small, with pale blue walls and a single window that looked out onto the street. The same street I had watched for years, dreaming of something bigger, something different. The late afternoon light came through the glass, soft and golden, touching everything I owned. I looked around slowly, taking it all in, not with sadness, but with clarity. This place had never truly been mine. I pulled out a suitcase and began packing. I didn't rush, and I didn't hesitate. A few sets of clothes, my important documents, and my notebook, the one I had kept hidden, filled with plans, ideas, and numbers no one else ever cared to ask about. That notebook was the only thing that felt truly important. Downstairs, I could still hear faint voices, but I ignored them. None of it mattered anymore. The silence inside me was stronger than any noise they could make. By the time the sky turned dark, I was ready. I carried my suitcase down the stairs, past all of them, without stopping. No one spoke this time. No one tried to stop me. I walked to the door, opened it, and stepped outside into the cool evening air. For a brief second, I paused, not because I wanted to go back, but because I understood something clearly. This was the end of one life, and the beginning of another. Then I walked away, without looking back. By the time the sun began to rise, I was no longer in Europe. The night I left, I didn't wander or hesitate. I moved with purpose. Every step I took had already been planned long before that final argument in the house. While others saw me as someone with nothing, I had spent years building something quietly, piece by piece, far away from their expectations. By early morning, I found myself in a tall glass building in a busy city in America, sitting in a calm, polished office that smelled faintly of leather and fresh paper. The city outside was already alive. Cars moved in steady lines, people rushed along sidewalks, and the world carried on as if nothing had changed. But for me, everything had changed overnight. I sat across from a man named Mr. Carter, a lawyer with a calm voice and sharp eyes. He had worked with me for months, helping me arrange everything carefully, step by step. Yet even he looked at me with a hint of surprise, as if he still couldn't fully believe I had gone through with it. "Are you absolutely sure about this, Sophia?" he asked, folding his hands on the desk. I met his gaze without hesitation. "Yes," I said simply. There was no doubt in my voice, because there was no doubt left in me. He nodded slowly and turned the papers toward me. The documents were thick, filled with details, signatures, and numbers that would overwhelm most people. But not me. I had read every page before. I knew every line, every condition, every outcome. This wasn't a sudden decision. It was the result of years of quiet work, hidden behind a life that others thought was ordinary. I picked up the pen. For a brief second, I looked at the top page. It described the full purchase of a private island fortress, complete ownership, no shared control, no hidden conditions. The final number was printed clearly, $110 million. I signed my name. Once. Twice. Again, where needed. Each signature felt steady, controlled, final. When I finished, I placed the pen down gently and slid the papers back toward him. Mr. Carter exhaled softly, almost like he had been holding his breath. "Congratulations," he said. "It's officially yours." Yours. The word settled differently than I expected. Not heavy, not overwhelming, just right. While everyone back in that house believed I had nothing, I had been building something they never saw. I worked quietly, invested carefully, and trusted no one with my plans. I learned how money moved, how people made decisions, and how power often came from patience, not noise. Every late night, every ignored comment, every moment they dismissed me, it all became part of this. I stood up from the chair, smoothing my jacket. The room felt smaller now, like I had already outgrown it. Mr. Carter offered his hand, and I shook it briefly. If you need anything else, management, expansion, legal protection, just let me know, he said. I will, I replied, though I already knew I would handle most things myself. When I stepped out of the office, the city air hit me differently. It wasn't just fresh, it felt earned. The sunlight reflected off the tall buildings, and for a moment, I simply stood there, watching people move around me. None of them knew who I was. None of them knew what had just happened inside that building. And I preferred it that way. I reached into my bag and pulled out my phone. There were no messages. No missed calls. It was quiet. Exactly how I wanted it. I could have gone back. I could have sent a message, told them everything, shown them what I had done. I could have proven them wrong in the loudest way possible. But I didn't. Because this was never about proving anything to them. This was about leaving. For good. A black car was waiting for me by the curb. The driver, a man named James, stepped out and opened the door without a word. He had been arranged in advance, just like everything else. I got in, placing my bag beside me, and as the car pulled away, I didn't look back at the building. Instead, I looked forward. Airport. James asked calmly. Yes, I said. Private terminal. The rest of the journey was smooth and silent. At the private terminal, everything moved quickly. No long lines, no waiting crowds, just quiet efficiency. Within a short time, I was seated inside a sleek jet, the kind most people only see in pictures. The interior was clean and modern, with soft lighting and wide windows that showed the growing brightness of the morning sky. As the plane began to move, I leaned back slightly, closing my eyes for a moment. For the first time since I left the house, I allowed myself to feel something. Not sadness. Not anger. Relief. When the plane lifted off the ground, I opened my eyes and looked out the window. The city grew smaller beneath me, fading into distance. It didn't feel like I was escaping something. It felt like I was finally stepping into what I had built. Hours later, I would see the island for the first time, the place that now belonged entirely to me. But even before that moment, I already understood one thing clearly. I had crossed a line that couldn't be undone. There was no going back to that house. No returning to that version of my life. And I didn't want to. Not even for a second. The first time I saw the island, I didn't say a word. The jet had already begun its slow descent, and through the wide window, the endless blue of the ocean stretched in every direction. Then, slowly, it appeared, my island. It rose from the water like something unreal, surrounded by clear waves that reflected the sunlight in soft, shifting patterns. From above, I could already see the outline of the fortress, strong and precise, built on the highest point of the land. It wasn't just a house. It was a statement. As the plane landed on the private strip, I felt a calm settle over me. Not excitement, not disbelief, just a quiet understanding that this was real, and it was mine. When I stepped out, the air was different. Clean, warm, and open. There were no city sounds, no distant voices, no pressure. Just the soft sound of the ocean and the wind moving through the trees. For a moment, I stood still, letting it all sink in. After everything that had happened, this silence felt like something I had earned. A woman approached me with a composed expression and steady steps. Miss Sophia, she said politely, offering a slight nod. Welcome. My name is Clara. I manage the island. Her voice was calm, professional, but not distant. I looked at her briefly and nodded in return. Thank you, Clara. She gestured toward a sleek black vehicle waiting nearby. If you'd like, I can show you the property. I didn't answer immediately. Instead, I took one last look at the open horizon, then turned and followed her. The drive was smooth, moving along a clean path that curved through carefully maintained greenery. Everything was organized, intentional, controlled. I noticed security points, discreet cameras, and reinforced gates placed in a way that didn't disturb the natural beauty of the island. Every detail had been designed with purpose. When we reached the main house, I stepped out slowly. It stood tall on the cliff, built from a mix of glass and stone, reflecting both strength and openness. The structure faced the ocean directly, with wide terraces and floor-to-ceiling windows that captured the view perfectly. It wasn't just impressive. It was precise, like it had been waiting for someone who understood it. Inside, the house was even more striking. Clean lines, soft lighting, and a quiet sense of control in every room. Clara walked beside me, explaining details, the security systems, the private offices, the underground storage, the staff quarters located at a distance for privacy. I listened, but I didn't ask many questions. I already knew most of it from the plans. "This will be your primary office," she said, opening a large door. I stepped inside. The room overlooked the ocean entirely. A wide desk sat near the glass wall, and behind it, shelves ready to be filled. It was simple, but powerful. I walked toward the window and stood there, looking out at the water below. The waves moved steadily, calm but constant. "This is fine," I said quietly. Clara nodded. "If you need any changes, they can be arranged immediately. I'll let you know." The rest of the day passed without rush. Staff moved quietly in the background, handling everything without unnecessary conversation. By evening, I found myself alone on the main terrace. The sky had begun to shift into soft shades of orange and pink, reflecting across the ocean in a way that felt almost unreal. I sat down, holding a cup of coffee, and for the first time in a long while, I allowed my thoughts to move freely. There was no noise from the past here. No voices telling me what I was or wasn't. No pressure to explain myself. Just silence and control. Over the next few weeks, I built my routine. Mornings started early. I reviewed reports, checked investments, and made decisions without interruption. I expanded what I had already built, moving carefully but confidently. My assets grew steadily, crossing $150 million, then $180 million, and within a year, they passed $200 million. But it wasn't just about the money. It was about structure. Every decision I made here was mine. Every result, good or bad, belonged to me alone. And that gave me something I had never truly had before. Freedom. Clara proved to be efficient and reliable. She handled operations without needing constant direction. Occasionally, she would update me on island matters, maintenance, supplies, staff coordination, but she never overstepped. That balance made things easier. One evening, as we stood reviewing a report, she paused slightly. "You've built something very rare here," she said. I glanced at her briefly. "I didn't build it here," I replied. "I built it long before I arrived." She seemed to understand, because she didn't ask anything further. That night, I returned to the terrace again. The ocean was darker now, reflecting only the faint light of the moon. The wind was softer, quieter. I thought about the house I had left behind. The voices. The moment everything ended. But the memory didn't carry weight anymore. It felt distant. Irrelevant. Because standing there, on that island, I knew one thing clearly. I hadn't lost anything. I had simply stepped into a life that was always waiting for me. And for the first time, I wasn't just surviving. I was in control. By the time months had passed, the island no longer felt new. It felt natural, like it had always been part of my life, waiting quietly until I was ready to claim it. Every part of my day had a rhythm now. I woke early, worked with focus, and ended each evening on the terrace, watching the ocean stretch endlessly in front of me. The silence that once felt unfamiliar had become something I depended on. Nothing here was accidental. Every decision I made shaped the life around me. The investments I expanded, the people I chose to work with, even the way the island operated. It all moved according to my direction. My assets had grown beyond $200 million, but I didn't think about the number often. It wasn't the money that mattered anymore. It was what it represented: control, independence, and distance from everything I had left behind. One morning, as I sat in my office reviewing reports, my phone vibrated quietly on the desk. It was unusual. Almost no one had this number. For a moment, I ignored it, finishing the page in front of me. But when it buzzed again, I reached for it. A single message. From Leo. I stared at his name longer than I expected. It had been months since I left, and there had been nothing, no calls, no attempts, no questions. Just silence. And now, suddenly, this. "Are you okay? We heard about you, about the island, about everything." I read it once. Then again. There was no accusation in his words, no anger. Just uncertainty. Maybe even concern. For a brief moment, something shifted inside me. Not enough to hurt, but enough to remind me that I hadn't always been alone. I leaned back slightly in my chair, holding the phone loosely in my hand. The room was quiet, the ocean visible just beyond the glass. Everything around me was steady, controlled. Nothing here demanded an answer. But the message did. I thought about replying. It would have been easy. A few words, maybe even a simple "I'm fine." That's all it would take to reopen a door I had already closed. And yet, I didn't move. Instead, I let my mind go back. Not to the message, but to that night. The house. The way my mom's voice filled the room. The way everyone stood behind her, silent but clear in their position. No one stepped forward. No one questioned it. Not even Leo. That memory wasn't painful anymore. But it was clear. And clarity changes everything. I sat there for a long time, the phone still in my hand. Then, without rushing, I placed it back on the desk. I didn't type a reply. I didn't overthink it. I simply let it go. Not out of anger. Not out of pride. But because I understood something now that I didn't before. Some doors, once closed, are not meant to be opened again. Later that day, I stepped outside. The air was calm, carrying the soft scent of the ocean. The sky was wide and clear, stretching endlessly above me. I walked slowly toward the edge of the cliff, where the view opened completely. The waves moved steadily below, unchanged, unaffected by anything happening beyond them. I stood there, silent, my hands resting loosely at my sides. There was no weight on my shoulders anymore. No expectations pressing down on me. No voices trying to define who I was supposed to be. Just space. And certainty. Clara approached quietly from behind, stopping a few steps away. "Everything is running smoothly today," she said. "No issues to report." I nodded slightly, not turning around. "Good." She hesitated for a moment, then added, "If there's anything you need." "There isn't," I replied calmly. And it was the truth. After she left, I remained there, watching the horizon. The sun had begun its slow descent, casting soft light across the water. It was the same view I had seen many times now, but it never felt repetitive. It reminded me of something simple, something constant. Time moves forward. And so do I. That evening, I returned to the terrace with my coffee, just like I always did. The sky shifted through its colors, slowly fading into night. I thought again, briefly, about the message. About Leo. But the thought didn't stay long. Because I had already made my choice. I didn't need closure from them. I didn't need explanations or apologies. What I had now was enough. More than enough. Peace doesn't come from going back. It comes from moving forward without hesitation. As the last light disappeared beyond the horizon, I stood up and walked back inside. The glass doors closed quietly behind me, sealing off the outside world. Not as a barrier, but as a boundary I had chosen. And in that moment, I knew something with complete certainty. I had walked away from that house without looking back. And I never would.